Hi there guys, this is a little introduction for you before you come along to start one of our classes or our courses. So I'm just going to go through a few little bits with you to make sure that you feel ready and that everybody's on the right track. So one of the first things to think about before you come to class is what equipment you bring your dog in. Now if they are still a bit pully on the lead when they see things that are interesting or possibly even a bit worrying to them, then we really recommend that you bring them in a harness and not on a collar. We only take dogs into class on anything like slip leads if they're fully lead trained. So that means you get no pulling, so that there's no tension on that neck and we're not going to be applying pressure that causes damage in any way at all. So it needs to be a harness ideally if they are pulley. And I've got Penny's harness here, which just shows you the type of harness that we recommend. And that is a harness that has a nice V shape under the neck. So we want to make sure our harnesses fit well. And this kind of V shape underneath the neck, make sure that again there's no undue pressure being applied and that they're just nice and comfortable. So they've got full range of movement of all their limbs, there's nothing restricting the shoulders, and we can make sure then that as and when they do put pressure on that lead, all that's going to happen is some training and not anything else. So that's the first thing to think about. The second thing to think about is how your dog might cope in a room full of other people and dogs, especially if they're young or possibly they've not experienced that before or they're very excitable. So we recommend that you practice at home with them with something like a snuffle mat, like this one here, or a licky mat if you've got one of those, and just routinely once a day for a few minutes put some food onto that licky mat or into that snuffle mat, or you can use a Kong, a stuffed Kong, and just let them have a good old snuffle away. Then I'm going to come over again. If they're used to using this, they'll find it quite calming. So if you then bring that along to class, and we always have snuffle mats available to you as well, what you'll find is that in between exercises, or if you're trying to listen and concentrate, you can just load some of that food into the snuffle mat, and that's going to prevent them getting too distracted and trying to pull into the pod next door to you or anything like that. So it's a really good idea just to prep them with it at home so they already understand what it is and how it works. That's good. Penny's having a good old snuffle. So once you get to class, one of the main things that we'll talk to you about, and you'll hear us say an awful lot, is making sure that you mark and reward good behaviour. So this involves teaching your dog or puppy a clear marker cue for good behaviour. So this is a word or sound that tells your dog when they've got something right. Now this is really important because that always clearly points out to your dog how to repeat that same thing to get it right again. It also makes sure that we can tell your dog what they did in order to receive a piece of reinforcement, so a little tiny tidbit, something yummy to eat. And that is really important because we don't want to just bribe them with food or just lure them all the time by getting them to follow food. Sometimes we might start like that, but our main aim is for you to not need to hold the food, and that you can ask your dog to do something, they understand what it is you've asked for, they complete the behaviour, and then you reinforce it by whatever means is appropriate. So we need a clear communication method to point out good behaviour to your dogs, and that's what makes it really achievable for them to repeat it and for our training to progress. So in a lot of the initial sessions that you attend with us, we will go over conditioning of this marker cue, and this is what I want to show you today with Penny so that you can practice at home and make sure it's nice and well established really. We always recap it in a lot of our classes and throughout all of our courses as well, but if you're practicing it at home, you'll just find that learning consolidates a lot quicker. So I normally use the word good as my marker cue. It's quite clearly good and not good girl or good boy, because I say that a lot, you know, I want to tell them when they're a good girl or a good boy, but when we're pointing out a clear, precise behaviour to them, a short, sweet sound like good is much better. So we have some clients that use the word yes, and that's absolutely fine as well, or you may choose to use a clicker. which works in exactly the same way. It's just not a verbal sound, it's obviously a sound that comes from a box clicker or a button clicker. So I'm going to show you how to use the word good to condition a marker for good behaviour, and then hopefully you can have a go at home. So you'll need lots of tiny tasty tidbits. You're at the ready, pen? And we're not going to worry about what the dog is doing, although you need to be in shot, Penny Poo. And all we want to do is hear the sound, good, and then immediately reinforce, good. So I don't want to move my hands, good, until after she's heard the marker, good. What I want is her to hear the marker and immediately be fed, good, good. And you can see that when she hears the word good, she looks at me, good. That's because she's anticipating the food coming next. Good. Good. Ooh. So if she's jumping up and mobbing me, which Penny's quite good at not doing these days, I just ignore that and wait for her to put her feet down. Good. But other than that, I'm not asking her to do anything. I just want her to hear the word and immediately get a piece of food. Good. And that way she'll really understand that good equals the reinforcement. So once we practice that, a lot of times when we're talking, you know, a good number of times, what we can do is use that to point out a good behaviour. So if I was to do a sit, pen, what's this perhaps? And I was to lure that head high, good. As soon as her bottom touches the floor, I mark the behaviour with the good and then reinforce. Same goes with the down. I'd lure the nose low, good. And then as soon as her tummy hits the floor, I'd mark and reward. And if I was to recall, Penny, which apparently we're not going to do at the moment, Penny, good. As soon as she comes in close, I mark and reward. Good. Again with the sit. And then we can go with no food in our hand. Good. But the food still follows that good each time. Can you stand up? Good. So each time she moves into the position that I want her to go to, which I'm guiding through my hand signals, are you going to do it? Good. She hears that marker, so she knows that she's got it right, and then she immediately gets the piece of reinforcement. So what we need you guys to do at home is lots of short, sweet repetitions of good treat, good treat. This isn't you asking the dog to do anything, it's just them hearing the word good and immediately receiving something yummy. That sets them up to understand that this sound is important. And then when we start to put that sound, that marker in place, when they've done something for you that you've requested, like a sit or a down, it helps them understand that that behaviour is complete. They did that, they got it right, therefore they're going to get reinforced for it. So we bring the food in immediately after the marker. Then later down the line, as they get better and better at compliance and focus and engagement with you, what we're able to do is we can put delays between the marker and the reinforcement, and we can also start to ask for multiple behaviours before we mark and then reward. So it really helps to build your training journey up much, much stronger as time goes on. So at home for me then, what we're going to think about is building up a reinforcement history around something like a snuffle mat, a stuffed Kong or a licky mat. We're also going to make sure that we're not bringing our dogs into the centre on anything that's going to really apply too much pressure onto their neck or throat, or any harnesses that might restrict movement in any way. And we're also going to just do some practice at home of mark, reward, good treat, or if you so choose, yes treat. It's entirely up to you. Any questions though, contact me, Lara or Jess here at the centre, and we shall help answer them as best we can. We hope to see you soon.